The experience of Germaine Strobel, a 19-year-old traveling from Italy to the United States with her chaperone Celeste Caputo, was one that really showed me how maturity can rise to the task under circumstances that call for it. Germaine was supposed to be chaperoned by Celeste Caputo, who was several years older than her. But as it turns out, after the crash, it seemed like Germaine became her guide and showed her the way to safety. After the crash, Germaine and Celeste sat on the deck, and they could barely sit. They had to hold on to the railing behind them as they were praying, because the ship was listing so much by this time. Germaine finally heard something that made her realize that people were leaving the ship. She thought she was praying for a merciful end. She looked out and she saw that there were lifeboats leaving the Andrea Doria. She said, "Celeste, we have to leave. People are abandoning the ship." Well, Celeste panicked, and she said, I cannot climb down a rope. And Germaine said, "Well, then I'll just have to leave you." But she convinced her, and Celeste finally made her way down, and she explained to me during an interview for Alive on the Andrea Doria how her hands were burning and her ligaments were tearing and her muscles were throbbing, and yet she made the climb down. Germaine tied her purse around her stole, and even though she never felt that she had athletic ability, she made it down into the lifeboat as well. This was a story that was also predicated on a premonition that Celeste had. And Celeste had dreamed the night before that she and Germaine were going to be in an accident when they arrived back in America, and they were on the turnpike going to Ohio. So perhaps Celeste instinctively knew that she was going to have to overcome her fears. Germaine and Celeste finally arrived in Michigan, and Celeste went on to her home in Ohio. Little could Germaine have predicted that not only would she have to act as a mature adult to save her life and Celeste's life on the Andrea Doria, but also to be the caretaker for her father. Because of the strain and the stress of hearing the news of the sinking of the Andrea Doria, Germaine's father had a massive heart attack the evening she returned home. And because his wife and 2 children were in Italy, Germaine accompanied him to the hospital, took care of him for a couple weeks, while the oldest son, who was only 16, took over the shoe store. It was truly a story of where the children had to play the role of the adults after a traumatic event affected a whole family.